Namo Namaha Bhaktam Sarvesham Hardam Swagatam. Welcome back to the channel Sanskrit Sopanam. And moving ahead in our Learning Sanskrit through Gita series, this is the 65th shloka from the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And again, this shloka is like a follow-up to the 64th shloka that we saw in the last session. Okay, so if we have gone through that shloka, this shloka is like a follow-up to that. Whatever Krishna was saying earlier, it's a follow-up to that. So what Krishna is telling us, what we can learn from the shloka and what we can learn from Sanskrit point of view, all this we will see. Without wasting any more time, let's quickly dive in today's video. Okay, so this is a shloka in hand. Let me go through the shloka once. Prasade sarva dukkhanam hanirasyopajayate prasanna chetaso hyashu buddhif paryavatishthate. Okay, so this is the Mula Shloka and this is the Padacheda, Sandhi Vicheda version of the Shloka. Let us spot all the Sandhis we can. Okay, so between these two padas, Sarva Dukkhanam and Hanihi, you can spot this is the Anuswara Sandhi. That a makara at the end of a pada is followed by a consonant. So makara is replaced by the bindu, the Anuswara. So this is the Anuswara Sandhi. Okay, then another Sandhi we can spot between Hanihi and Asya. And what Sandhi is this? So the Visarga is very clearly changing into a Rakara. So what is this Sandhi? This is the Rutva Sandhi, the Refa Sandhi. So Hanihi Asya becoming Hani Rasya. Visarga changing into Rakara. Okay, and then again we can spot the Sandhi between Asya and Upajayate. What Sandhi is this? So this is clearly the Guna Sandhi. A and U, they both are getting replaced by the Guna letter O. So Asya Upajayate becoming Asyopajayate. So Hanihi Asya Upajayate together becoming Hani Rasyopajayate. That is what you see in the Mula Shloka. It is because of Rutva Sandhi happening here and Guna Sandhi happening here. Okay, then in the second line we can spot the Sandhi between Prasanna Chetasaha and He. What is this Sandhi? So a aha is followed by a soft consonant, right? Prasanna Chetasaha. So in the end you have this aha which is followed by ha. It is a soft consonant. So what is this Sandhi? Visarga changes into U. Okay, Visarga changes into U and that is Uttva Sandhi. Correct? Change into U, so that is Uttva Sandhi. And as soon as Visarga changes into U, again another Sandhi happens and that is this Guna Sandhi. So A and U, both of them are replaced by this O. So as soon as this Uttva Sandhi happens, immediately after that, this Guna Sandhi also happens. And ultimately, Prasanna Chetasaha, this becomes Prasanna Chetaso. That is what you see in the shloka. Prasanna Chetaso. Okay, it is a result of Uttva Sandhi followed by Guna Sandhi. Okay, I hope this is clear. Then we can spot another Sandhi between He and Ashu. And what Sandhi is this? So very clearly the Ikara of this Ha is getting replaced by this Ya. Ikara replaced by Yakara, that is Yana Sandhi. Okay, so He Ashu becoming Hyashu. Okay, so that is this Yana Sandhi. Okay, so that are all the common sandhis we can spot in the shloka. And again, all the sandhi rules, the entire word by word breakdown of this particular shloka is in the PDF sheet that you can download from the link in the description box for your own swadhyay. Now let us move on and start the decoding of the shloka. So here in the shloka we can spot two kriyapadas, upajayate and paryavatishthate. Okay, so let us take this first kriyapada first. And upajayate basically means something happens. Okay, upajayate in the sense of something rises, something arises, something happens in that sense. And very quickly, this kriyapada is coming from jan dhatu. See, jan dhatu means to be born, to arise in that sense. So along with the upa upsarga, jan dhatu in lat lakaraha prathama purushaha ekvachanam becomes upajayate. That means something happens in that sense. So we are starting with this kriyapada. And immediately the question will be, ka upajayate? What happens? And the response is, hanihi upajayate. And hani, this basically means destruction or degradation of something, deterioration of something. That is hani. But within the context of the shloka, we can take this word cessation. So hani in the sense of cessation of something, disappearance of something in that sense. So, hanihi upajayate. This is the Prathama Vibhakti Ekvachanam form. Okay, hanihi upajayate. Cessation happens, disappearance happens in that sense. But if we'll move on, so the question will be, Kesham hanihi upajayate. Cessation of what happens? Kesham hanihi. And the response is, Sarva dukkhanam hanihi upajayate. So here, Sarva Dukkha, this is the Pratipadika. See, Dukkha Pratipadika we already know. Sarva Dukkha in the sense of Sarvani Dukkhani, in that sense. Basically, all the sorrows. That is what we are trying to say here. Okay, Sarva Dukkha, all the sorrows. So that is the Pratipadika. And we want to say the cessation of all sorrows. So cessation of all the sorrows. So in this prayojana, we will use Shashti Vibhakti and Bahuvachanam. So Sarva Dukkha in Shashti Vibhakti Bahuvachanam becomes Sarva Dukkhanam. And the sentence becomes Sarva Dukkhanam Hanihi Upajayate. That the cessation of all sorrows, of all agitations happens. That is the meaning so far. Okay, so now if you move on, now we can ask a question. Kasya sarva dukkhanam hanihi upajayate. That the cessation of sorrows happens for who? Cessation of whose sorrows? Kasya. And the response is asya sarva dukkhanam hanihi upajayate. See, Krishna is using the sarvanama pronoun here, asya. Asya basically means his or for such a person, for him. But keeping in mind the previous shloka, because this is a follow-up of that shloka only. In previous shloka, Krishna was talking about this vidheya atma. Basically, he's talking about the same sthita prajna person, a person of steady wisdom. In the previous shloka, he used vidheya atma as the word. So we are basically saying vidheya atmanaha, that for a self-controlled person only, cessation of all sorrows and agitations happen. Okay, so this asya, this pronoun form which is coming from the pratipadika idam pratipadika, this. Okay, this person. So this idam sarvanama, this is being used for that vidheya atma only, that sthit prajna person only. So it is taking that pullinga and shashti vibhakti hi ekvachanam form. So asya vidheya atmanaha, for him, that is for a self-controlled person, cessation of all sorrows, of all agitations, upajayate, happens. That is what Krishna is telling us. Okay, so I hope all these words, they are also clear. And now moving ahead, I can ask this question that asya sarva dukkhanam hanihi upajayate, that cessation happens, but kada hanihi upajayate, that when do such cessation of all the sorrows happen? Okay, and again drawing from the previous shloka only, Krishna says prasade asya sarva dukkhanam hanihi upajayate. So we already saw this word prasada in the previous shloka. Okay, in the previous shloka, prasada, this meant serenity of mind, tranquility of mind, the purity. Or basically this prasada means that divine grace. Okay, and in the previous shloka we saw Krishna says that such a person, such a vidheya atma person, prasadam adhigacchati, that he attains such grace. Okay, and as a follow of that, Krishna is saying prasade, that when the grace is attained, upon the attainment of that grace. So this prasade is not the usual Saptami Vibhakti Prayoga, in, on, at. It is not in that Prayojana. This prasade is the Sati Saptami Prayoga. And we have already discussed this Sati Saptami Prayoga so many times before with different examples. Okay, see very shortly, Sati Saptami Prayoga, this replaces the use of this word yada. That suppose in the previous shloka, Krishna says, prasada madhigacchati, that such a person attains prasada, attains grace, right? So now he will start the next sentence by saying, when the grace is attained, right? So basically Krishna is trying to say this, right? That yada prasadaha adhigataha, that when the grace is adhigataha, is attained. Okay, that is what he is trying to say as a follow-up. Yada prasadaha adhigataha. So I can write this entire sentence like this, or I can use Sati Saptami Prayoga, where what we have to do is, the noun that is to be taken in the Saptami Vibhakti. That is why prasade. Okay, and even though they are not using this adhigata, it is implied that when prasada happens. Okay, so that is that Sati Saptami Prayoga, that instead of using this yada, that yada prasadaha bhavati, when grace happens, yada prasadaha asti, when grace is, yada prasadaha adhigataha, when grace is attained, instead of using this yada, we can put the noun in the Saptami Vibhakti, and that is that Sati Saptami Prayoga. It gives the same meaning. So prasade and adhigate sati. This is implied here. See, I've also told this, that in a lot of places you will see this word sati. If this is used sati, this is a clear indication that it is a Sati Saptami Prayoga. And it may also not be there. So within the context you have to understand this, that whether it is a usual Saptami Vibhakti Prayoga or it is a Sati Saptami Prayoga. But within context it is easy to understand. But anyways, prasade adhigate sati, when the grace is attained, asya vidheyatmanaha sarva dukkhanam hanihi upajayate. When that grace is attained, which Krishna spoke about in the previous shloka, then all the sorrows, all the agitations, their cessation happens. That is what Krishna is telling us. Okay, so I hope all these words up till this point, they are clear. Now if you move on, now we have this second Kriya Pada, Paryavatishthate. And this Kriya Pada is coming from Stha Dhatu. Okay, Tishthati, Tishthate, in that sense. So Stha Dhatu, but Stha Dhatu generally means to stay. Okay, to stay put in that sense. But along with these combination of upsargas, pari and ava, the meaning becomes to become firm, to become steady. Okay, so pari plus ava plus tha. This combination, the meaning is to become firm or steady, and the form is again same. Latlakaraha prathama purushaha ekvachanam. Okay, so pari and ava, due to yana sandhi, this becomes pariyava, and from this tha we get the form tishthate. So that is this pariyava tishthate. That is the kriya pada you see here. And the meaning is something becomes steady, something becomes firm in that sense. And then the question will be ka pariyava tishthate. And Krishna says buddhihi pariyava tishthate. And with this buddhi, you can take both the meanings. Buddhi in the general sense of mind, intellect, and buddhi in the sense of wisdom also. Because again, all these shlokas are centered around the theme of sthita prajna person. So a person of steady mind, a steady wisdom. So this buddhi here represents both. That the mind becomes steady or such a person's wisdom becomes steady. Okay, buddhihi paryavatishthate. This ikaranta pratipadika buddhi here in prathama vibhakti ekvachanam. Because this is the subject of this kriya pada paryavatishthate. Okay, so I hope this is clear. Then again, kasya buddhihi paryavatishthate. And again we know he's talking about that same asya, his. Who is this? Is Vidheya Atma, Sthit Prajna person. Okay. So we know he's talking about that same person, but then again he's using another adjective for him. Prasanna Chetasaha. And this Prasanna Chetasaha, this is coming from the Samastapadam Prasanna Chetas. See, Prasanna in the sense of happy, satisfied, blissful, and Chetas in the sense of that consciousness, okay, that being. And with this Samasa, what we are trying to say? Prasannaha Chetaha Yasya. That one who has acquired now a blissful consciousness. The consciousness is again always blissful, but we have to see in that a relative light. That a person, a jiva who was bound, has now become this vidheya atma, sthit prajna person. And for such a person, sarva dukkhanam hanihi upajayate. The cessation of all the sorrows, all the agitations has happened. And so now this jiva, which felt bound earlier, has now become this blissful soul. Okay, so in that sense, that prasanna chetas, that blissful soul. And Krishna is saying that such a person's prasanna chetasaha buddhihi paryavatishthate, that a blissful soul's mind, his wisdom, becomes firm, becomes steady. Okay, prasanna chetas, this pratipadika is being used in shashti vibhakti ekvachanam. So I hope this pada is also clear. And then very interestingly, Krishna also tells us when does this happen. Kada buddhihi paryavatishthate. When does the mind and wisdom becomes steady? And Krishna is saying, prasanna chetasaha buddhihi ashu paryavatishthate. Ashu, this is an avyayam, and ashu means immediately, at once. Okay, so that is that impact Krishna is trying to give here. Prasanna chetasaha buddhihi ashu paryavatishthate. That such a person's mind, his wisdom, becomes firm at once. It becomes steady, becomes established in the truth at once, immediately. And with this, we complete this shloka. Let us see the Anvaya along with the Anuvada. Okay, so as a follow-up to the previous shloka where Krishna says that a Vidheya Atma, Sthit Prajna person, while transacting in this world, while experiencing all the sense objects, they attain this grace, they attain the serenity of mind. They reside in that serenity, in that tranquility of mind and in that divine grace. Okay, that is that prasadam adhigacchati. Okay, so the Sthit Prajna person has attained that prasada, that Ishwar prasada, and as a follow-up to that, Krishna says, prasade, the Sati Saptami Prayoga. So prasade, when the grace is attained or upon the attainment of such grace, asya sarva dukkhanam hanihi upajayate. So the cessation of all sorrows and all agitations happen for who? For Vidheya Atma, for such a person. Okay, asya sarva dukkhanam. So upon the attainment of such grace, the cessation of all sorrows and agitations happens for a self-controlled person. Okay, and when all the sorrows, all the agitations are gone, so such a blissful soul's buddhihi ashu paryavatishthate. Okay, prasanna chetasahi buddhi ashu paryavatishthate. That the wisdom of such a blissful soul indeed becomes steady at once. His knowledge, his wisdom, his mind, his intellect, they all becomes steady at once. Okay, so that is a shloka. And again, see, there's a clear path. What Krishna is trying to lay down in front of us. When we read Shastras, we come to know about the true facts of life. Okay, all the higher possibilities, all the possibilities and facts of life which are not perceivable by our senses. So our Shastras inform us about the true nature of this Srishti, this universe, our own being, everything. When we come to know about it, we can, with that knowledge, we can sharpen our mind. Because all this is due to the reason of ignorance. By knowing about all of that, we are trying to attack that ignorance. We are trying to fight that ignorance. So, by reading about those Shastras and by contemplating on them, Shravana and Manana, we sharpen our intellect. Okay, and then by reading and contemplating on these things, we also try to evolve ourselves out of this duality of Rag and Dvesha. Okay, by doing so, our senses, they remain in our control. Because when we are not pulled by the Raga and Dvesha, these duality, we remain in the control of our senses. And with our senses under our control, when we experience the world, when we transact in this world, we attain prasadam. We attain that tranquility of mind, serenity of mind. We attain that purity. Okay, we attain that grace. So that is that. And then in the shloka, Krishna clearly tells us that upon the attainment of that grace, that purity, that grace, all the sorrows, all the agitations, they end. Okay, and this is an obvious thing to say. See, what is happiness? Happiness is peace. Peace is happiness and happiness is peace. Just as what is sorrow? Sorrow is agitation and agitation is sorrow. So when we have acquired that tranquility of mind, that is after all the cessation of all the sorrows, of all the agitations, because peace is happiness. The entire philosophy of yoga is chitta vritti nirodha, that cessation of the agitations of mind, chitta vritti nirodha. So peace is happiness. So that is the obvious thing Krishna tells us. But then he also tells us that for such a blissful person, that for such a person who is now at peace, his buddhi, his intellect, his wisdom becomes firm. So this is like a feedback loop, because even though we attain such composure of mind, such calmness of mind, our mind is still powerful and our mind is still fueled by all the previous vasanas. So maybe all the previous vasanas we have not extinguished. So there might be a danger of reverting back to the actions. But then there is also this feedback loop, that for a person who is at peace, his mind also, his intellect also becomes more and more steady. It becomes firm. And when does it become steady? Ashu paryavatishthate. That immediately it becomes steady. So it's like a feedback loop, that when you attain that peace, your intellect, your mind, your wisdom, it becomes steady. And then all the vasanas, they can be extinguished. And then in that journey, you keep rising up until you reach that final, that ultimate bliss. Okay, so that is what Krishna is telling us. So it's just like a follow-up and kind of a conclusion of whatever Krishna is being telling us so far in this second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So I hope all the words, they were clear. I hope the use of Sati Saptami Prayoga in this verse, it was also clear. So I'll now take leave. I'll meet you in another video with another shloka. Until then, stay awesome, stay happy, keep learning Sanskrit. Vayam punah milamaha. धन्यवाद.